Welcome back to another Nature's Always Right video with Stephen Cornett. We're going deep into gardening today, giving you my 5 best tips to keep your summer garden going strong going into fall. Today is the beginning of August here in Zone 7A. It's about 90 degrees today still, so we've still got lots of that summer heat to go, but we're also going to start thinking about our fall plantings as well. We'll get into that at the end. One of the most common questions I get, especially from newer gardeners, is how much do I water? Now, I'm not going to give you a specific formula, and if you guys have watched many of my videos, I try to never give you formulas, only when it makes sense, because I want you to learn how to do this without a recipe, without me or any other teacher there to guide you. So when it comes to watering, consistency is huge. Blossom end rot is one of the more common things that happens to gardeners. That's when the bottom of a tomato starts rotting. The real cause of that, the most typical cause, is actually from inconsistent watering. So maybe you got a huge deluge of rain after a lot of dry weather, it dried out, got wet again, and then that can cause that to happen. And this is actually one of the reasons why a lot of southern growers or places with a lot of rainfall will grow tomatoes in houses, because if there's too much water, it can cause problems for any crop. Calcium deficiency is what's usually noted. That could be possible, but a calcium deficiency in soil is more of a rare situation, so check your watering. If you're using drip irrigation, it's much easier to control the consistency at which you are watering. And if you want to learn how to do your own drip irrigation, I have many very in-depth videos that will guide you through that complicated process, so check those out in the description. But I'm going to teach you a technique right now to determine for yourself anywhere, anytime, when should you water. So my preferred watering technique is to try to mimic rain, which would be to fully soak the soil and then stop and let it go for many days before watering again. What I typically try to do, like on a plant like this, because it's so established, it has such deep roots, I'm gonna wait till it's like almost 2 inches of dry dirt before I would actually add water to this, and hopefully I'll get a rain in the meantime. You can really back off watering once plants get more established, and it's a really important thing to pay attention to. Okay, we just got a bunch of rain recently, so I know that this is going to be fully wet. We don't need to water, but what we'll do is dig down, and what you can see immediately is the dark color, much different than the surface, which is dry. And this is what you're gonna do around every plant that you wanna know, hey, do I need to water this? Well, put your finger down in there. Dig down about 1 inch or 2. If you see moisture in that first top inch, you do not need to water. I'll add a caveat to that. If the plants are in their baby stage, which means they just sprouted out of the seed and up to about 2 weeks, during that time, the plant is developing its root zone. The longer it lives, the deeper and wider those roots will go out to find nutrients and water. So the more established a plant is, the less often you're going to have to water it. But if I had some lettuce seedlings here, this amount of moisture would be perfect for them. But I would want to think about, okay, maybe at the end of today, tomorrow morning, maybe at the end of tomorrow, I'm going to want to water those baby seedlings, because I just know from experience that in 90-degree heat with the sun blasting down, this spot will probably dry out in 24 to 48 hours. And this is why I recommend you constantly paying attention and observing. This is how you become a good gardener or farmer. And I would say if there's some beginners watching this, overwatering is what you really need to be careful of. Almost all new gardeners overwater their plants, so be careful of that. Let's check out one more example and we'll move on to the next topic. So here's a little bit drier bed, and if we dig down, it's a little bit drier, right, in that first ½ inch, and then boom, it's wet. And you can feel that on your finger. I don't even have to see it visually, I can feel it. These strawberries have been here for many months. I know that they have a root system. They've got water for probably 2 or 3 days based upon what I'm seeing here. Okay guys, so these okra right here, Look how big these plants are. Huge stalks, they've got roots super deep. I'm not gonna have to water these the rest of summer. The rain is gonna do that for me. So this leads me to my final topic about watering, and that's thinking about the weather and timing that with your watering and paying attention. So this is my second season growing in 7A here in Tennessee. I think it's like 50 something inches of annual rainfall. I grew up farming and learning how to farm in San Diego, where you're completely irrigation dependent. It doesn't rain for 8 months out of the year, hot, dry climate. So I have extensive experience with irrigation because I had to run everything that I did on irrigation. But here in Tennessee, the first gardening year, last year, I only watered about 4 or 5 times the entire year. I didn't have any drip irrigation. That's just how amazing the rainfall is. So I thought, oh yeah, I don't have to really set up drip irrigation. Well, I was wrong, because we do have droughts here in Tennessee, and we pretty much always get one in summer. Maybe 4 to 6 weeks there won't really be much rain at all, and it seems like you can pretty much count on that. Last year it was more like we didn't really get one, but the year before that it was kind of August, September. This year it was more like July. We didn't get any rain. So I had to come out here and water, and watering takes a lot of time if you don't have drip irrigation or a sprinkler or something. So definitely check out my drip irrigation videos. They will really help you set up the most efficient, the most cost-effective one possible. And I will eventually build drip out here maybe this winter, and I'll show you guys my strategy for this type of garden. So I really want you to start paying attention to the weather, the temperature, the humidity, and then possible rainfall. If you can pay attention to those things while you're watering and observing what happens to the plants, that's gonna really accelerate the learning curve for you. Now, one last thing, I always come up with more tips, guys. In the middle of summer, there's gonna be many plants that you'll think won't be watered enough. They will have droopy leaves. Summer squash is famous for looking like it's getting beat down and it needs water when it really doesn't. So some plants, when they experience too much heat, they will droop, and that's just what they're doing to help protect themselves. What your job is to come up to the plant and look under the soil and say, does it have enough moisture? So that's just one more thing to keep in mind, that a droopy leaf doesn't always mean that you need to water. So that's why I'm always emphasizing, check the soil. Always check the soil before you're determining what needs to happen with watering. The second big thing to do in your garden to keep it producing is plant maintenance. Each plant has a little bit different thing that you can do to it to help encourage it to grow longer and better. But many of these techniques will work on any plant, and you can kind of apply those principles to other plants. So I'm standing here in front of a basil plant. One of the big things that you can do for your plant is snipping off the flowers. Snipping off the first 2 leaves even right after the flowers. That's just going to encourage the plant to put out more leaves rather than taking itself to seed, right? Every plant, all of these plants here, their ultimate goal is not to grow these leaves, it's to grow seeds to propagate itself. And knowing that about plants can really help you to make certain decisions. Picking off the flowers is more important in the beginning stages of its life. And you can also prune this in a way to create more bushiness and more leaf growth, and I have a great video on that. But ultimately what you're doing is you're taking a section where there's 2 nodes that are coming out like this, and rather than letting the central leader grow, you remove that, allowing these 2 to become leaders that will then double, double, double. And that's just a technique to get it more bushy. Let's check out another plant. So when it comes to plant maintenance that you can apply to any plant, this is the big one here. Look for dead, dying, dried out leaves. Those are typically going to be on the underside of your plants. As the plant grows up, whether that's a tomato, a cucumber, okra, whatever it may be, it's not going to send energy or anything down to these lower leaves. It's just going to dump them off. Like as you're seeing here on this okra, this lower leaf doesn't really get much sun. I could just pull that right off. And I actually could prune this okra up a lot more, because as I remove these leaves, if you've ever grown okra before, typically it's this main stem that is producing the fruit as it's going up. If you let suckers grow off and the side shoots go off, they will produce more okra there, just like a tomato puts off side shoots and more fruit. I haven't done enough playing with okra to determine how much pruning is really good for it. I didn't start growing okra till I moved to the south. So this is one of my newer vegetables that I've been learning, but these principles still apply to it. So helping your plant to do that, especially if you're doing like a single leader tomato or cucumber, it encourages the growth to go upwards. And you're removing leaves that are going to attract bugs. You will see aphids or mites, things like that on these leaves. So removing it from the area, composting it, it will also help a little bit of disease and pest pressure as well. This is a tomato plant that's not doing that healthy. Honestly, guys, I didn't do a ton of work this year in the garden. I planted everything and I just let it go crazy. And I've done that the last couple of years because I'm focusing on other aspects of my property and stuff. And since I'm not selling this for profit, you know, if I don't get every single tomato, it doesn't matter to me. So I've gone back to thinking more like a normal, regular gardener again a little bit. And I think that that's a good thing to express to you guys of, it doesn't matter if the plant's not perfectly healthy, like it doesn't matter. Look how many tomatoes are on here that I can eat. It looks to me like this has probably some sort of fungal problem. Just looking at how these leaves are all dried up, the way that they're yellowing like this at the top, and those little spots, that's not an insect, this is a fungal thing. Okay, and this happens at the end of the season for tomatoes, especially if you're in a humid environment like me. The best advice I can give you is to do succession planting of your summer veg. So in the first part of the season, you're gonna plant at the end of May, June. This is all gonna depend on your frost dates, of course. Check out your USDA hardiness zone. That's gonna give you a lot of information if you don't know what that is already. And then you're gonna do a second planting later on, the succession, in like July or something. As plants get older, they lose energy, they lose vigor, they lose their pest and disease resistance, right? As humans get older, as animals get older, we go through that same process, right? But this plant only lives 6, 8 months maybe. So the beginning stages, it's young, it's got health, it's on the upper part of the bell curve, it's producing fruit, tons of fruit, less fruit, now disease, death. So all of our plants and animals are going through that cycle as well. So just be cognizant of that. So now, what would I do with this tomato plant? At this point, guys, I would just keep harvesting it and not waste my time, unless I was desperate for, I want to get every piece of fruit off this. Because this is fungal too, I'll take it away to an area and then compost it over there. Because I can reach high temperatures, I know I'll kill those fungal spores. So another consideration in the plant maintenance is to do consistent harvesting. You're harvesting the fruit that's ready. As soon as it's ready, you're getting rid of it. Because like I said, this plant wants to produce seed. If you're taking that young fruit before it's fertile seed, it's gonna say, oh my gosh, I thought I was gonna have these ready for seed. I don't. Now I need to produce more fruit higher up. And that's what you're kind of tricking the plant into doing over and over and over again. So whether it's okra, cucumbers, tomatoes, summer squash, especially you guys know if you don't get that summer squash, it turns into a baseball bat in a day. So staying on top of that is gonna keep your garden more profitable and just more abundant in general. So on these okra, there's a certain size of okra that's ideal. If it goes to be this big, it's no longer good. So you might miss your window of opportunity to eat it. So here I am with a huge Korean hot pepper plant. This is another one. Your peppers, once they ripen, they get to that red or whatever color that they are, get them off, get them in a refrigerator or dry them out, dehydrate them, process them, pickle them, turn them into a hot sauce. Those are all things that we've done the last couple of years that we've really enjoyed. Lacto fermented hot sauce is delicious. Highly recommend it. So now we're gonna get into fertilizing. This is a very healthy plant. It has a lot more life to go. It's putting off tons of flowers still, tons of fruit. It's very productive, very healthy. Here's one leaf that looks a little bit yellowed and crappy that I would take off. So it's just an excellent shape. So this is a great candidate for fertilization and talking about feeding your plants to keep them going longer. When it comes to fertilizers and all those different topics, you guys know I like to make everything myself or buy it from people that make it themselves or do completely natural process. So here are the main things that you should be focusing on for an organic, beyond organic, regenerative type garden. Compost, number one. That's got your macronutrients, micronutrients, and probiotics. Worm castings, same thing, but in a more even concentrated form. Worm castings is my go-to fertilizer, like strong food. Then you've got minerals. Minerals I like to add in the form of either a rock dust, like azomite, or sea salt. Sea salt is the cheapest way to get minerals, and it's very effective. And I will put a formula down in the description to tell you guys how to make your own seawater. This is a Korean natural farming technique. Getting beyond that, and even another very strong fertilizer would be a fish emulsion, fish hydrolysate, or the best version of a fish fertilizer is fish amino acid, and that's the Korean natural farming way of fermenting the fish over 6 months. I work with SD Microbes, a company based out of San Diego, who I've been friends and have worked with since the beginning of his company. I even provided him some of the vegetables that he took and made fermented plant juice to create his products. And now he works with other regenerative farmers to do that. But he makes the bokashi that I sell, fermented plant juice, fish amino acid, water-soluble calcium, all these different Korean natural farming inputs he sells there, and I stand by everything that they make. And I sell it on my website. You can get 10% off using Nature77. So thanks for shopping on my website, guys. And all of these different things can be made for free, but I'm just telling you that you can buy them if you don't want to go to that effort. If you're interested in drip irrigation, or you want to see what I buy through Amazon, or any of those things, if you buy through those links down in the description, it's a way that you can support my channel at no cost to you, or possibly even get a discount. So check those links down in the description. I really appreciate you guys using those links. So now let's get back into the pepper. Now, how much would I fertilize this thing? That's always a common question. Well, less is more a lot of times, I think. And because these are no dig beds, I did a cover crop in them. I've added tons of compost, all sorts of different natural things. These beds are pretty darn fertile. And I know that because I added all the soil. This isn't bagged soil from the store that's gonna be less potent. Because of that, I'm not gonna have to fertilize or do as much, but I would like to give it a little bit of boost. So for this, I would add in 1 full shovelful of compost per pepper plant. If I was gonna use worm castings, I would use 1 regular sized handful and spread it around the base of the plant. If I was gonna combine these inputs, which I typically do, what I would do is just mix it all up in a 5-gallon bucket or a wheelbarrow or whatever size that I think that I needed for my garden. And this is where it comes back again, guys, to not using a recipe or just kind of learning by following a recipe for a little bit, but eventually you should be able to step away from that and say, well, I kind of know what it needs. If I was gonna do fish amino acid, I would just do the recommendation that they do. I don't know, I think it's like a tablespoon per gallon, something like that. And then dilute that, water that into as many plants as you can. If you're gonna make your own seawater, add that in to your fish amino acid or whatever other water-soluble nutrients that you would like to water out, and then water that into the garden. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it, but also be very particular. Don't feed plants that are on their way out. Like those tomatoes that looked unhealthy, don't feed that. It's just not worth doing it. Just harvest what you can off that plant. But the healthy stuff like this, that okra could definitely use some feeding, and it will boost the amount of fruit that you're actually going to get. Now, if it's a fruiting crop, these crops need a lot more potassium and phosphorus. There's many other nutrients as well, but if you're using a fertilizer that's higher in potassium and phosphorus, that is going to be beneficial for supporting the flowers. If you're doing Korean natural farming, use a fermented plant juice or a fermented fruit juice that you could get collected from the fruiting process. At this point, you wouldn't want to spray a vegetative fermented plant juice. It's too late. They're in the fruiting stage, so you want to spray a fermented fruit juice on this to encourage those, to give it more enzymes and hormones to help produce more fruit. Then we're approaching fall now, guys, and I did a big cover crop last year, and I'm a huge fan of cover crops. Every time I do it, I'm always blown away by how much better it makes the soil, how fertile I feel like the soil is the following season when I grow into it. So cover crops are a very low cost way to increase fertility, biodiversity, soil biodiversity. I can't recommend that enough. And I've got my cover crop mix that I really like. I'll put down in the description for you guys. And I'm gonna finish up my video showing my trials of what I did for that cover crop, so stay tuned for that one. But cover cropping's coming up in like September is when you wanna think about sowing that. So start thinking about that as we get closer. As you know, we're speaking about fertility here. That's a great way to get fertility naturally and very inexpensively. I just noticed something else in this pepper bed, and that's that there's mushrooms growing right around the root zone of this pepper. And a lot of people will worry and think, oh my gosh, is there something wrong with the soil? No, there's not something wrong with your soil. That's an awesome sign. It means there's fungal life. That fungal life has grown, has eaten on things, and now it's pushing up. I'm gonna call it like a fruit. They spread the seed of the mushroom. So don't be concerned if you see that. I'm actually happy that that's there. Just let the mushrooms do their thing. They're actually gonna just fall over and die after they release their spores. If they're in your way, then just remove them and plant in their spot, but don't worry about that. Now, if you're getting mushrooms all the time, constantly, maybe you're overwatering, like your beds are staying too wet. So that would be my one caveat. Make sure the beds aren't like consistently wet all the time. Okay, guys, the fifth and final tip for you guys is to start thinking about fall planting, because at the beginning of August, we can now start planting seeds for the fall. So this is, again, you know, the USDA hardiness zone is gonna really help you understand what you can and can't plant. Your Google search is your friend. You know, for broccoli, for instance, say, when to plant broccoli in fall, in zone, blah, blah, blah. And it's gonna be according to your frost date. I think it's like 80 to 100 days before your frost date is when you would plant broccoli. So you can these are rough numbers. This is a formula, but nature doesn't work on a formula. Every season's gonna be different. The weather changes every single year. The weather's not the same every single year. People always like to forget that. And you're also gonna have a microclimate in your little area. The area where we are, I notice, it doesn't get as much rain as other areas surrounding us. So you need to pay attention to that every year, maybe even make some notes, especially on those more difficult crops like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts. Those are all trickier crops. Those are more advanced, I'll call them, because of the timing window, because you're planting them in fall or in spring. So before it gets too cold, they need to have their head form. Before it gets too hot, they need to have their head form. And that's what makes these difficult to do. And a lot of times we fail because we're busy with our summer garden and we forget, oh my gosh, we gotta plant stuff for fall. So start planting your seeds now, especially the cabbage, the cauliflower, the stuff like that, because you can keep potting those up to make them bigger and wait for that final shift that we get when the weather cools down. Plant them in the middle of September or about, and then you should get good broccoli or cauliflower or whatever. Now the more cooler season stuff that's faster, like radishes, lettuce, beets, things like that, it depends where you live. You can plant that right now and you can put it under shade cloth. There's all sorts of tricks that you can do to keep your production going. But these are faster growing crops, so wait to seed those maybe in September, the beginning of September. Start thinking about let's seed some lettuce, all that, the quick growing, cooler transplant stuff. You could maybe think about doing it then. And like I said, do the succession planting like you do in summer. This is gonna provide you a more guaranteed harvest. Especially when you haven't been farming in a location for years. Like I have not been here for years. In San Diego, I could give you more exact advice. But here I don't know. I gotta take more notes and I gotta figure it out. So I'm gonna try planting like 2 weeks apart and then see like which ones do better and try to figure that out. Where is kind of more of my window of where I need to plant these things. Because the formula online only goes so far. And weather is different every year. It changes from year to year. So this is why I will always say, and I think most professional farmers would always say, observation is the most important thing that you can get good at when it comes to growing your own food. And then one more thing, pull your weeds, guys. If you don't get those weeds out of your ground, they go to seed, you're gonna have a weed problem next year. So be sure that you're also removing your plants that have seed heads. I've got seeds surrounding my garden right now because my mower broke. I really need to mow. So that's another huge thing. If you guys haven't hit the like button on this video yet, please do me a favor and hit that for me. It really helps me out. Subscribe if you like my content and hit the notification bell so that you can know when I go live or anytime I put out a video. Thanks for using my links down in the description, and have a wonderful day on your farm or garden, and I will see you in the next Nature's Always Right video.